I was able to fill more than one sketchbook with a full-time job and little to no time. I worked on my tarot deck and my oracle deck and started working on my witchy journal. I then started teaching at an art school and started working on 2 new comic book projects. In January, I reopened this YouTube channel and got monetized in a month and a half. And later on, I started also working on an illustrated book. I think it's safe to say that I've been booked and busy. Still, during this year, from September 2023 to September 2024, I could manage to fill at least 170 pages from my sketchbooks. Now, I am a full-time professional artist, so of course my job requires me to constantly make art. However, when I talk about sketchbook pages, I mean it. Every comic book page, illustration, painting, or art piece outside of my sketchbook stays outside of it. So when I talk about filling your sketchbooks, I talk about a practice outside of your professional work. I do have sketchbooks I use for work, for storyboards, or to plan my art lessons, for example. But again, here I'm talking about the fun part. Sketchbooks we take the time to fill for the pleasure of it, not for some artistic moral duty. So how can we manage to fill a sketchbook with our busy lives, dense academic schedules, and full-time jobs? Let's talk about it. Hello, my name is Veronica, aka Vespertilio. I am an Italian comic book author, tarot and oracle deck creator, and your spooky art teacher.
It's me again, yours truly.
One of the reasons why we might be struggling to fill our sketchbooks is the lack of ideas and inspiration. Most of the time, one of the reasons why we can't seem to find inspiration is actually because we don't really know what inspires us. Many people think of inspiration as something divine that strikes upon us, blessing us with ideas. But in reality, inspiration is quite simply what we like, what fills us with wonder, what pushes us to create. The cat just jumped out of the windowsill. What inspires us indeed. We can summarize few different ways of understanding what inspires us in 3 sources. Media we consume, so books, movies, music, etc. Our personal experience, something we saw, something that happened to us, something we witnessed. And knowledge of ourselves, what we know about our personal taste, what we really like. By diving into these 3 realms, we are able to discover what inspires us. And this is something we can also explore by sketching freely or by journaling, which is something that I'm kind of being able to stay consistent this year. I actually noticed a lot of benefits in this practice. Now, I understand this may look like a lot of work and it may sound overwhelming, but I got you, because lately I've discovered a great system to explore your passions and collect information about what inspires us. I'm talking about the practice of keeping a commonplace book, a journal where we can collect basically anything, every bit of information that captures our attention and curiosity. You might have heard about something like this before. Klaus from A Series of Unfortunate Events has one, for example. I started my commonplace book when I took the course Cultivating Curiosity, Create a Commonplace Book by Ruby Granger on Skillshare, which is also the sponsor of today's video. Ruby encourages us to embrace our curiosity. She applies the technique of commonplacing to studying and developing ideas, but she emphasizes the importance of being open and curious, which I think is really important not only to learn about the world around us, but also to learn about ourselves. One thing I like to do in my commonplace book is to have a monthly spread for inspiration highlights, where I take note of everything that caught my attention, from TV shows to music to books, stuff I thrifted, basically everything that kept me inspired. I highly recommend her course, but if you'd like to try something else, you don't have to look any farther, for Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives of all capacities, with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, productivity, drawing, and much more. Whether you want to find a new hobby, turn it into a career, or learn how to really embrace your creativity, Skillshare can provide you with the tools for your next step. So if you're ready to get inspired and explore your passions, the first 500 people to use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today. And thank you again, Skillshare, for partnering with me. So since I've got a lot to say about how to fill a sketchbook, I decided to divide this topic into 2 separate videos. Each video is going to be divided into different parts that I'm going to list right now. This first video is made of 3 parts. Part 1 is about time management, how to find the time to work on our sketchbooks. I called part 2 Pick a theme and don't niche down. Contradictory, but very useful for when we lack in inspiration. And part 3 will contain a list of prompts I have personally worked with in my sketchbooks for you to take inspiration for your pages. Once the second video is up, it will be linked in the description of this one. In the second video about this topic, I will mostly focus on what I learned from my experience drawing directly pen on paper, and will be made of 3 parts as well. Part 1 is about embracing versus correcting mistakes, the power of imperfection. Part 2 is called If You Say It's Done, It's Done, rough sketches versus finished art pieces, what belongs in a sketchbook. And part 3 will contain another list of prompts for you to take inspiration for your pages. As usual, you'll find the complete timeline with each part of this video in the description below. And with that said, let's start with part 1. Time management. In the introduction, I emphasized about the fact that our personal sketchbook is something separated from our professional artwork. However, I'm proof that art made out of fun and pure passion can be then turned into a professional work of art. My tarot deck was first created on a tiny square notebook. My oracle deck started as a scrapbook project of my moon-themed sketches. The WItchy Journal I worked on is filled with drawings and details from my sketchbooks, and I'm currently collecting some of my favorite pieces from my sketchbooks for my next project. This to say that an important piece of advice I feel giving you is do not worry about wasting your time. You may never know what you might create out of pure passion. And that's the beauty of art making. A quick sketch can bring the spark for a new project. Or years later, you might find the inspiration for your next job in your sketchbook pages. Also, spending time making art for the pleasure of art making improves our mental health and therefore makes us navigate our busy lives more easily and efficiently. Because yeah, we have our responsibilities and duties, of course, but time spent making the things we love is never wasted. Of course, as long as you don't harm yourself or others, in which case, please go seek professional help. I'm talking about harmless creative activities here. Okay, Veronica, I got the idea, but that won't change the fact that I don't have time to work on my sketchbook. Let me stop you right there. I've already talked about this issue in several of my videos, but I always think it's worth repeating this as much as it's needed. This video is probably going to be 10-15-ish minutes long. Now, instead of watching another video, you could be drawing on your sketchbook. Instead of binge watching a show or scrolling on your phone, you could be drawing. And I'll tell you more. You can draw while you do other tasks. I draw while watching my comfort movies. I draw while waiting for the water for my pasta to boil. I draw on the train. If there's a long line at the post office, I take out my sketchbook and I doodle while waiting for my turn. If you think about it, you'll notice that every day there's plenty of time we spend waiting for time to pass. And that's time we could spend drawing on our sketchbooks. Now, you might worry that you're not yet fast enough to make art during these short time frames. And I'll stop you again right away to bring back Veronica from a couple of videos ago. The truth is that we can always find the time to make art. What we're really struggling to find is the time to make good art. A scribble on a notepad is worthy of being called art as much as an oil painting. Not because it is valuable, but because it is the act of art making what's meaningful. So now, every time you feel like you want to make art, but feel like you have little to no time for it, make little, quick, imperfect art. Allow yourself to express yourself artistically, even when you have no time to make it look good. good. Giving yourself permission to make art despite it looking good not only will help in filling your sketchbooks, but it will inevitably transmute into practice. And when you then find time to make your art pieces look good to you, you'll be more trained and therefore you'll navigate your art sessions more easily because you'll have more experience, even though you might not notice at first. With that said, let's get to part 2. Pick a theme and don't niche down. As anticipated earlier, one of the most common issues about filling our sketchbooks is the lack of ideas and inspiration. Before going on, I want you to ask yourself, why do I want to fill my sketchbook? Is it because I want to prove I can do it, and to whom I want to prove that? Is it because I want to take pretty pictures for my social media? Is it because I love the satisfaction of finishing a sketchbook? Or is it to have a reminder of the good time spent making art? It's important to ask yourself such questions because if we dive into our personal sketchbooks with heavy expectations, we might easily and quickly become overwhelmed by the task. It's even easier for us to get stuck and stop drawing, not only because we feel the pressure on us, but because such pressure makes us discouraged and makes us discard any idea that doesn't seem good enough. But here's the great reveal. The truth is that you have to take for granted that every idea is good enough. You want to fill your sketchbooks for the pleasure of making art, to experiment and to express yourself. So it's fundamental to not niche down because, as we said earlier about inspiration, you might not know what will resonate with you until you try it. And while on a professional level you might want to stick to a specific aesthetic and technique, your sketchbook is the perfect safe space for you to try it all. Now, when we're starting a new sketchbook or we want to start a new adventure on an unfinished one, we might experience what is called blank page syndrome or first page fright. That's another symptom of the fear of imperfection, for we don't want to mess up our very first page, or else we'll feel like we've ruined the whole thing. Now, to fight this irrational fear, we can proceed in a few different ways. For example, we can boldly go to the very first page and make an elaborate artwork like we're jumping right into the ocean. Or you can start with something completely mindless and leave it there and just keep going, no matter if it's not something special. This is an advice that I once read on a comment and I found it both hilarious and quite useful, actually. You can leave the first page blank. You can then decide to go back to it when you feel confident enough, or just leave it blank. Or, as I did one time, print something or copy one of your favorite drawings and glue it on the first page of your sketchbook. In my case, I had done this on the first page of my scrapbook. Now, you might have done the work and explored what are the things you like and what inspires you, and we might have overcome the first page fright. However, you might still feel like you're lacking ideas, in which case you can start by picking a theme. It can be anything: redrawing the cover of your favorite books, your favorite animals, your dream wardrobe, robots, vampires, anything. Pick a theme and then divide it into 5 up to 10 prompts. For instance, for books I would do Dracula, Coraline, The Surreal Life of Leonora Carrington, and The Graveyard Book. For animals I'd do bat, cat, wolf, snake, fox, and goat. For robots we might pick different kinds of robots like soldiers, astronauts, chefs, builders, etc. and so on. I'll give you more prompts in part 3, but if any of these appeals to you, feel free to use those. The point is to write a list of prompts ready to be tapped in for several days ahead. After you finish with your prompts, you can either work on new ideas you got while working on these prompts, or you can just pick another theme and write a new prompt list. Do not niche down. You can work on robots for 10 days and the next prompts could be cat breeds. Also, if while you're working on a theme, you get the idea to draw something else, please do. If you are a lover for aesthetics and you don't want your fairy queen among your robots, you can simply count the pages you need to finish your robots prompt list, then draw your fairy queen, and then go back and fill the empty pages with the rest of your robots, basically. So you'll be able to embrace what inspires inspired you in that moment right away and still be able to go back and finish your robots and have them all together in your sketchbook. It's worth mentioning that around on the internet there's plenty of prompt lists for you to tap in, so feel free to look them up. Now, getting back to the aesthetic matter, one thing that helps me stay consistent with my sketchbooks and have them look cohesive even when I jump from theme to theme is using my original characters as the main theme of my sketchbooks. Since the creation of Vespertilius has been the main focus of most of my sketchbook pages and most of my art in general. And even when I started picking themes that might have looked distant from her, I always would find a way to make her interact with those and include her in my drawings. Then when I started creating her friends, they also started appearing in my sketchbook pages. For instance, here I wanted to draw Christmas decorations for my Christmas tree. Each decoration is themed with one of my characters. I made the characters interact with the theme. I didn't have to give up my inspiration to draw Christmas decorations. So if you have one or more original characters you can help but draw constantly, but also want to dive into different prompts, having your characters interact with each new theme is a great way of proceeding. So don't niche down and pick a theme. Now get into part 3. Here are the prompts for your sketchbooks. Now that we learned that there's plenty of time to make art in our sketchbook and that there's no such thing as a bad idea, it's time to open your sketchbooks and start drawing. And to help you, I'm going to give you not only a list of prompts, but a list of prompt lists I have personally worked with. Number 1 is moon phases. New moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter, waning crescent, and new moon again, I guess. If you feel like it, you can also add the lunar eclipse. You can either get inspired by the various shapes of the moon phases or dive into their symbolic meaning and get inspired by those. The second prompt list involves plants. You can pick your favorite 5, 10, 20 plants. You can work with flowers, trees, succulents, your pick. Here's a list of plants I have sketched in my sketchbooks. Rose, lavender, oak, rosemary, moonflower, belladonna, mandrake, and sunflower. I am also really tempted of sketching something about baby's breath, so that might be a prompt for us all. The next prompt list is quite a short one and it's season shifts. You might want to turn it into simply seasons, or you might want to work with both concepts. This is a shorter list, but I think it's worth mentioning because in the past couple of years I've always felt really inspired by the seasonal shifts, so I thought it was worth sharing this with you. So this list would be made of autumn equinox, winter solstice, spring equinox, and summer solstice. And if you want to get inspired by seasons in general, of course, that would be spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Last but certainly not least, the major arcana from tarot. In my specific case, what started as a simple prompt list became one of the most important projects of my life. But even if my tarot deck is already out, every once in a while, I get inspired by the major arcana cards and I try to redraw some of the cards in new versions. You can draw inspiration from the classical imagery of the cards or from their canonical meanings or from both sources, of course. This one, of course, is a longer prompt list, for it includes the 22 major arcana cards from tarot. But of course, feel free to pick the ones you prefer if you want to keep this list shorter. The major arcana cards are the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Chariot, the Strength, the Hermit, the Wheel of Fortune, Justice, the Hanged One, Death and Temperance, the Devil, the Tower, the Star, the Moon, the Sun, the Judgment, and the World. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. As usual, I really hope this was helpful to you. If you have any suggestions or requests for future videos, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Part 2 of this video is coming up very soon, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And if you'd like to help this channel grow, you can simply do it by hitting the subscribe button and liking this video. Don't forget to check out Skillshare at the link in my description to get the chance to be one of the first 500 people to click on my link and get 1 month free trial of Skillshare. If you'd like to support my art and content, my very first tarot deck, Vesper Tarot, is now available for purchase and you can get it at the link in my description. Also, if you like my art and would like to dive into my pages, consider joining my newsletter where I share weekly updates on my digitalized sketchbook. If you stayed till this point, thank you very much. I will see you very soon with more art videos. In the meantime, let's make art. Bye.